Welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and you are watching and listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, coming to you right here on this beautiful Tuesday night, January 9th. And if you're in Lubbock, it's way more beautiful tonight than it was last night. Because yet last night we had wind and weather and sleet and snow and all of it together. It was cold, miserable. We had an awesome show last night, but the weather was bad. And today in Lubbock, it's been beautiful. So we sure are glad to be here tonight. We're coming to you from our new setup at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We've got a new little setup here. Hopefully it's all working out. I think it is. And everything seemed to be working last night. And we're also doing a live radio show on 98.7 Walk by Faith and on 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. So these are two things that are happening all at once, all coming to you, and it's all about health and wellness. We do this show simply to bring you information about health and wellness and what we do here at The Rock and try to help you live a healthier life. That's what it's all about. So hope you guys had a great day doing that, and I hope that all this is working well. Yeah, there we go. All right, so we're good to go. Had a great show last night. Had Brooke Fisher, our movement specialist, on the show with us and talk about a dynamic, fantastic young individual. She is. We're really glad to have her on our team. I had one of my patients tell me that today as they left the office. They said, you got a good team, and that's really what it's all about is putting together a team so that we can take care of you, because I can't do it all by myself. I need some help, and to have someone like Brooke, on the team is great. She's taken her position by the reins, and she's handling all that. So we're really glad that she's here. She did a great job, and she's part of our treatment program. She's part of what we provide here. So when you come in and you come onto my side of the building, you'll get chiropractic care. We'll work on functional neurology. We try to get your body and your brain to function as optimally as possible. Then we'll send you across the hall to Brooke, and she's got all kinds of toys and gadgets over there that we have in our brain rehab center so that you can get the maximum out of your visit. And she's just she's dynamic. She's fantastic. I love her work ethic. I love her nutrition, the things she does exercise-wise. Got a great family. I actually got to chat with her grandmother last night. So we had a message last night that on our Facebook page, and Grandma said she loves her too, and I saw that was pretty cool. The grandmas are a big deal about how things end up. So it was great. And tomorrow night we'll have our book review night like we have on Wednesdays. And then on Thursday night, Kim Van's going to join us. She helps run our nutrition department here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. And she's going to join us and talk about a little bit about her past, about what she's got going on with us. I don't know exactly when we started taking care of Kim and her family, but her son is just about to graduate high school, and I think he might have been 4 years old when they started. I'll have to go back and look at that before Thursday's show. But I've tried in the past to get Kim on board with us because I just think the world of her. But we finally made that happen this last year in 2023, and got that started. So it's going to be a good show. She's going to be here on Thursday. We're going to be talking about what's going on and with nutrition, with her family, with chiropractic care, how it's kind of evolved over all these years, and what we've got in store for you, what we have to offer, and what we can do. And so I think that's going to be a good show. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you guys will get something out of it, and maybe you can make your life better by listening to what we're going to be able to do with Kim here in the office. So good stuff. Hey, if you're listening to the show and you'd like to join us, I would be glad to have you. If it's something that has to do with health and wellness, if you'd like to share a testimony, if you're a patient and you'd like to share a testimony on the show, we can have you live here in the studio, or we can have you Zoom in through our Restream that we're using. We've got a big smart board on the way that we're going to add, and so that we're going to be able to do that. So if there's something that we can help you with, and you would like to be on the show, you'd like to talk to us, then then let me know. We'll see if we can work it out. We'll see if we can make it something that's valuable to our listeners, and we'd love to have you. So I'm open to that if you're interested. It's why I tried to expand the studio just a little bit so that you did have the opportunity to make that happen. So also we had this conversation this morning in our staff meeting. We just talked about creating a culture of wellness in our town. Why not make Lubbock, Texas, the mecca of health and wellness? And why not make it the place where we have the healthiest people anywhere on the planet? Like that would be something that would be a cool thing to accomplish. So that's something that that it just bugged me because we mentioned this a little bit last night on the show, but it just bugged me because one of my patients got invited to a women's night, and in the email or the text or whatever that went out to her, it said someone asked about taking a vegetable tray, and she said, "But don't worry, we're not eating healthy." But I heard that sentence, and I just was thinking to myself, why would that be a sentence? And why would that be a sentence that why would you not eat healthy if you knew better, right? Like why wouldn't you want to eat healthy? And really it gets into mental health, which is what we're going to cover tonight on the show. If you're feeling that way, then there's some definite dopamine issues that you got going on, and there's some definite left brain issues that you got going on, in my opinion. And so, but I just thought, man, maybe I can do a better job of creating a culture that really works on being well. Like make it cool to be well. So if you got a family member, if you got something you want to talk about, you can send me a text. You can send me a text at 806-794-0400, and we can get into that. And I can answer your text. You can send me a message on Facebook. I'll try to get it here. And I appreciate the messages that we had last night from the people that sent messages in. So, but if you've got something that you'd like to talk about or just comment, the comments are welcome. If you don't like our show and you think it's stupid, the comments are welcome. I'll try to improve it. I'll try to take the constructive criticism. I'm coachable. I could do that. And if there's something that you would like to cover, then the comments are welcome. So I think that would be something that would be really fun, is to create that culture. And that's part of what we're trying to do. So tonight we're going to get into where we picked up off. We're going to pick up where we left off last night. And last night we were talking about, usually on Monday nights, we take health to church, is what we like to call it. And we take the sermon that we listen to on Sunday at church, and then we just take that whole model, that the lesson plan for whatever the pastor's teaching on Sunday, and then we just take it and turn it into health and wellness. And so last night on the first half of the show, Brooke was on, so we only got to start it on the second half of the show. And so I wanted to just pick up where we left off and maybe take the majority of this show and see if we can kind of tie some things together. I know we talked about it before, and I got the books up here. I sent those books, a lot of the things that what I've learned over the years, and they're not all in those books, but those are some big hitters right there that I've learned, that I've used to learn about health and wellness. And the series that they're teaching at church, at Hillside Church here in Lubbock, is the series on mental health. They're trying to teach a series on mental health, and it's a big subject to take on, and it's a tough subject to take on because it's such a wide range of problems that you can run into whenever you're dealing with mental health. The pastor kind of pointed out, there's mild and there's moderate and there's severe when it comes to mental health. And one of the things that he pointed out is that there's a lot of us that deal with it. And some of the studies, even 36.8% of people daily live with anxiety or depressive disorders. Now, disorders is a big word, and you got to be careful with that. But some issues that go along with that, they get complicated, and they get complicated for all of us. So I just thought that as we we might spend a little extra time trying to talk about what exactly it means, what is happening inside your body. Because the thing that really hit me, and I said it again, I said it last night, but the thing that really hit me about what they were trying to do with the church service, and they even said it there, said, look, we're not trying to be licensed professional counselors or psychiatrists. We're simply trying to talk to you about mental health as it relates in the Bible and from a theological position. And I was like, that's really good. That it's a big subject, and sometimes it takes multiple people to address it in multiple ways. And so I just thought that we would talk about it again tonight. And we went through last night, we went through the myths and we went through the lies. And one of the lesson was that you're not alone, right? You're not alone if you're dealing with mental illness. And when you're dealing with mental health, let's call it that. Let's don't call it illness, because this show is about health. Right? And what is the spectrum that you're on when you are dealing with mental health? And there's some things that I have learned about it that I really think are important for each and every one of us. And I had the conversation this morning. I was having a conversation about the subluxation and what does the subluxation mean? And in our office, you guys have. You may have heard me talk about that before, especially on the show. And what exactly does the word subluxation mean? And it means interference in your nervous system. And so subluxation means interference in your nervous system. And lux means light. And we are the light of the world. Lux means light. And we've gone over this multiple times, but we're tying it back together because it always comes back together. When you get down to this, this word right here is a huge word. It's a huge word. And if you can grasp it and you can really understand the meaning of it, then it can shed light, obviously, on your entire world. And then sub means below or less than. And ATION means a station or a place. So subluxation means a place less than light. So I really learned that. I learned that whole idea. And it's coming up on 24 years ago. I was living life just like everybody else was living life. I was coaching football at Texas Tech. My boss retired and I needed a job, and I went to work for my brother-in-law, and I learned what that word meant. And 24 years later, it's just gotten deeper and deeper and deeper. And the conversation we were having is one of my patients last week woke up and her knee was just all inflamed. Like she was really stressing out about her knee. She's got a bad hip already, but she's been doing our walking program. She's been using our Ultra G. She's been working and doing really well. But over the Christmas break, I took some time off. She took some time off. There's a lot of things that changes during that time of year. And she woke up one morning and her knee was inflamed and she couldn't put any weight on her leg. And she just was in a lot of pain and she was super worried about what was happening right there. And she came in and got adjusted. I guess it might have been Thursday last week. She came in and got adjusted and she was like, I'm going to the doctor tomorrow to look at my knee. And I was like, well, what's wrong with your knee? She's like, I don't know. I just woke up and my knee is just, I can't put any weight on it. It's just horrible. It's just, it hurts so bad and it's not functioning properly. And I was like, well, why don't you give me a chance to work on it? Like, why don't we adjust it? And she was like, well, first of all, she was a little hesitant because it hurt, right? She didn't want to deal with the pain of it, which makes total sense because she was worried about that because it was painful. And I mean, that makes total sense to me. It was painful and it hurt. So why would she want to, right? But she didn't know that about the subluxation. She didn't understand the subluxation part of it. So the first thing that you're taught to do, and I know you're thinking, what is he doing? He was supposed to be talking about taking health to church. Yeah, I am. I am, because it ties into this subluxation, but it's a great illustration of what exactly that means. But so the first thing that you're taught to do when you become a doctor, and when you're trying to diagnose a problem or figure out what a problem is you want to know the mechanism of injury. You want to know exactly what that means. Like, how did they hurt themselves? I said, well, how were you when you went to bed last night? And she said, I was fine. My knee felt fine when I went to bed last night. Okay, so the likelihood that she tore her knee up in her sleep, could it happen? Yes. Could she move wrong and tear a meniscus in her knee? Absolutely. Is that logical that it could happen? You bet it could happen that way. Is it likely that it could happen? Most likely not. One of the things my differential diagnosis teacher taught me in chiropractic school, her name was Dr. Obuse, and I think I've mentioned her before too, is that common things happen most commonly. So the first thing you do is you understand the mechanism of injury, and then you think to yourself, all right, well, what could she have possibly done that's caused her knee to be all inflamed today? Well, it might have been a bad step or something that she took yesterday, but most likely it didn't tear ligaments or tear her meniscus. She didn't break her knee in the middle of the night. She would have known that, right? So what was wrong with it? It was subluxated. There was interference in the system. There was interference in the way her knee was working. The lower part of your leg bone is your tibia. The upper, your thigh bone, is your femur. Go back to the old song, the leg bone's connected to the thigh bone. It is. It's connected to the thigh bone, and there's ligaments holding that all together, and there's muscles that are running across that joint, and there's a little meniscus in the middle of that joint. And if you get that tibia and that femur rotated, I like to say that the knee is like an obedient child. It does what it's told. And when I told her that on Thursday, I said, do you know any obedient children? Have you ever had any obedient children? And she just kind of huffed there for a second, and then she laughed. And so I take care of her daughters too. So, but it was funny. That was just a little funny moment right there. But that tibia and that femur can just get rotated a little bit. And then you get inflammation in the joint, and then it swells up, and then the inflammation causes the increased amount of pain. And so I was like, hey, let's adjust the knee. And so what do? You just rotate the knee back on the tibia, back on the femur. We use a little drop board that does that for us. And then I use my activator, turn it on its edge, and I do some clicking right in there just to make sure that meniscus goes back to where it's supposed to be. And then we use some stuff that's of all things, it's called voodoo wrap. Got it from Kelly Starrett, who's a physical therapist and a genius as far as I'm concerned when it comes to movement and function as of the human body. So, and we wrap that knee, and we got her to walk up and down the hall. It cuts all the circulation off from around the knee, and all the way to the foot. She got up, she walked around the hall, up and down the hall, took the wrap off, and she was better already when she left. And then she came in today, and I said, how's the knee? And she was like, we had a breakthrough. It was a miracle. She's like, you fixed it. Like, and I was like, it is a miracle. I do it every single day. It's such an amazing job to be able to adjust people and to remove their subluxations, remove the interference in their nervous system, right? Remove that interference in their nervous system. And that's what chiropractic is to me. It's always been that way from the very first day that I understood like what subluxation was. From the very first adjustment, it was pain management because I didn't know any better. No one did this show. No one told me about it. No one talked to me about the subluxation. They simply just said, I just thought you just hurt your back and you got adjusted, and that's what it was all about, right? No, it was about removing the interference and letting your body heal itself. Your body is a self-healing organism. if you put those cells in the environment that's congruent with health and you fire the pathways that are congruent with health, your body will express health. And that's what I've done it now. I'm starting my 20th year here in February, finishing up my 19th year. It's been the same story over and over and over. It's the same identical story. It's the subluxation to me. It's interference in the nervous system. It's interference in the way it works. And what happens in the office is that it's so nice to have those experiences. What people need is they need those experiences to be able to understand, like, oh, I see what you're saying. I see what the subluxation is now. Like, my knee didn't need any Tylenol or Advil. I didn't need to get a steroid shot in my knee. I didn't need to have knee replacement in my knee. I just needed to get my knee to function the way it was supposed to function. And then it was fine yesterday, but today it's not fine. And I didn't get tackled. I didn't go snow skiing. I wasn't water skiing. I didn't jump off a porch. I just simply went to bed and woke up and my knee was flared up. And so it's super awesome for the patient because they understand, hey, look, I get it. I get what he's saying. Like, I get what he's saying. So let's take that and talk about the mental health aspect, right? Because it's not any different to me. When you're dealing with mental health and anxiety in my office, not the church. The church has a totally different take on it, and the pastors have a totally different take on it. And it is a complicated thing to deal with. But what I'm looking for is where did the subluxation take place? And can we remove that interference? And the subluxation is going to take place is at the physical, chemical, and mental emotional levels. That's what it's all about right there. It's physical, chemical, and mental emotional. Let's see if I can. And I want us to think about that for just a second. It's physical, it's chemical, and it's mental emotional. Those are the causes of the subluxation. That is what causes the interference in your nervous system. So we've got something we can do about it in our office. Like, we got something we can do about it, and it doesn't make any difference to us. It doesn't make any difference to me if it's in your knee or if it's in your head. A matter of fact, I'm going to start in your head anyway because your brain's in your head, and that's where the whole thing, it's like we really want to make sure that that's firing properly first. But it's somewhat mechanical, right? It's somewhat an anatomical when we're dealing with it. It's not a ghost. It's not a cloud. It's not. It could be a spirit, and that's a different level. And that's where that's when pastors are coming in from that level. I do believe in all those sort of things, and I do believe that there's a spirit, but I don't believe that we're left to deal with it. I don't believe that it's one of those things. So the question is, what is going on with you when you're dealing with mental emotional stress, and when you're anxious. And what I have written down for my notes from church is, when you are anxious and someone asks, why are you so anxious? And you say, I don't know. I don't know. What's bothering you? I don't know. Why are you so anxious? I don't know. That's what we touched on last night, and it's what I wanted to carry over, right? You automatically get into the unknown. You get into the unknown, and you get anxious by design. That is exactly the why that happens. Your brain is designed to be a split brain. That's the book, The Master and His Emissary. That's Dr. McGilchrist that really broke that down for me. That talked to me about why don't we just have one brain? Like, why don't we just have, why is it divided at all? What would be the point in dividing the brain in half. Like, why would we even need to do that? And we would need to do that because because it has different functions. You take the brain and now you split it in half, and we're looking at it from the back, and so the right side's over here and the left side is over here. Why would that even be a thing? What difference does it make if there's a right side and a left side brain? Well, really, the reason that there's a right side and left side brain is because they have different functions. There's two different, the brain works together all the time, but they have two different functions, and the right brain deals with the unknown, the question mark. Why are you so anxious? I don't know. What does that mean? Well, it means that it's unknown, right? And so we're just about to come up on a break on the radio here, and so I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to listen to this. But we're going to cover the rest of this and kind of work through it so that you can have some ideas that might be happening to you or what might be happening to someone in your family when it comes to mental health and finish up the church sermon that we had on Sunday. So hope you guys will stick with us. We'll be back right after these messages. Yeah, so that's the first thing that happens to us is we have to talk about the unknown. Whenever we have that right side brain and we ask the questions, that was why. What is it the problem? And last night we read Psalm 42, and at the end of Psalm 42, there was just a barrage of questions that all of a sudden hit. I say to God, Psalm 42:9, I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why must I go about mourning, oppressed by the enemy? Where is your God? They keep asking. Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why so disturbed within me? Why, what, and why? Right? Those are the questions that put us in. Whenever we're dealing with those questions, we're in that right side brain. And then we got to get back to that primitive self about what exactly are we in that brain for? Well, why would you have a right side brain? Why would you have a mechanism that deals with the unknown? Well, the number one reason is survival. You're trying to make your way through this world, and what your nervous system is really trying to do is your nervous system is trying to equilibrate you in your environment. It's trying to help you adapt with your environment. That's really what your nervous system, it's changing your temperature, it's creating hormones, it's growing bones, it's growing new cells, it's constantly adapting to your environment. I had one of my patients said to me today, I take care of her daughter, and her daughter's been in a lot of pain, and I haven't seen her in several weeks, and over the Christmas break she was she wasn't functioning properly, and she said, I told my daughter, I'm sorry that you inherited my bad spine, because the mom's spine is horrible. She's a lovely lady and I love her to death, but her spine is horrible. And she said, well, I'm really sorry that you inherited my spine. And I said, I just really don't believe it works that way. I don't believe that's the way that it works. I believe I'm a true believer in epigenetics. I'm a true believer in the genetics upon the nervous system and upon the cells that causes the problem. So, hey everybody, we're back. This is Jason Clemmons. You're listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It's Tuesday, January 9th, and we're finishing up Taking Health to Church that we did last night a little bit. And we're just trying to finish this up tonight, because we may talk about it. We're going to talk about it a lot over the next few weeks, because this mental health is going to keep going. The story is going to keep going. But we talked about, we're kind of finishing up, or we're getting into the idea that why do you have a right side brain? What is the point of that right there? And the point of that right side brain is to keep you safe from threat. Keep you safe from threat. Is there a tiger or an alligator that's in that right side brain? And that's where anxiety is. People say, I had a panic attack. What'd you have a panic attack for? I don't know, right? The anxiety is where we deal with when there's not natural order of flow, that we want things to, and we know that, and you guys have we've gone through this a thousand times, right? The up and to the right, over to the left. That's the flow that we're looking for. We want that to happen right there. And whenever we ask ourselves why questions, we're over here in that right side brain, and the left side brain deals with the known world. And the left side brain is, if you knew the answer, you wouldn't ask the question, right? That's where that anxiety comes from. It's not knowing the answer to the question. So I want that to be somewhat understandable, so that you can, if you have the capacity to deal with your anxiety, or if you can have a little bit of understanding of what's going on with the anxiety of your loved one, that's a bigger deal, I think, actually, because the having the understanding of what's going on with your loved one will help you to understand what to do about it. Because sometimes you can do something about it, and sometimes you cannot do something about it. But I think there is a genuine pathway. There's some disruption of the pathway. There's some lack of power to the pathway. There is some sort of chemical interference of the pathway, and that gets, the whole thing goes back to the subluxation. The whole thing is there's some interference. There's some sort of interference, physical, chemical, or mental, emotional, that's causing this pathway not to fire properly, that's causing you the disruption in your life, that's giving you the mental problems. And it can be super complicated, because some of the things that are happening, they happened in the first 7 years of your life. Some of the things that are happening happened in the first 2 years of your life. And that's the body keeps the scorebook, right? And if you want to read about that, and if you have any sort of mental problems, anxiety, and when you would like to study and see why exactly that happens, there are some issues that are that way, that get locked in there from the early stages. And that's where you really have to have a bottom-up approach. That's why I don't think talking to a group like that, it's generally good, but what it's generally good for are the people that are able to rationally discuss it. That's what it's generally good for. Whenever we have a conversation about anxiety, like we're having right now, what we're having right now is a conversation of the upper brain and what we call the rational brain. That's what we are having right now. We're having a conversation about the rational brain. We're not having a conversation about the emotional brain. Because the people that have the emotional mental health problems are the people that have mental health problems that are severe, moderate, even to severe. They may be locked into this lower right side amygdala right there that's kicking off their whole stress response. And they're having to map their whole world around it. And that's where this pathway comes in. You know, I say up and to the right and over to the left, right? It really goes to this central crossroads first, then it goes here, then it goes up, then the upper brain locks down the lower brain, it inhibits, it dampens, and then you move over to the left. Well, if you have a serious problem, you're going to have you're first of all, you're not going to be able to follow this conversation. This conversation is not even going to make any sense to you at all because you're not coming from a rational standpoint. You're coming from an emotional standpoint. And that happened early in life because that's like below the age of 12. This is 12 or below is when we're in the emotional brain. Now, it doesn't mean that the trauma happened from 12 or below. It means that that's the development time from birth until 12 is the development time that happens to us and that can cause us to be stuck in our lower brain. And I've just had the conversation. I had a conversation today with a person. I heard a conversation about a person that has an event that happened in their life and just came up with some really interesting definition of how that event happened. They just made something up out of the blue because they didn't know what to do with it. And I know this person, and so this. I mean, we had the conversation here in the office, and they just have they have a situation in their life, and they just made up a story. And how many times what would they do? Why would they make up a story to justify the behavior or the actions or the event that has taken place? Well, they did that because the left brain has to move on with things. You can't be stuck. You can't move unless you know where to move to. And so the left brain has got to make a decision. Dr. Peterson pointed out to one time that he said if you drop a mouse, if you take a mouse and you put a mouse in a room and the room is sealed off, and like if we sealed all the doors and all the boards and everything inside this room and there was no way to escape from my office, and you put a mouse in here and you gave the mouse a couple of weeks, you put food and water in here and you gave the mouse a couple of weeks to adjust to things, the mouse would just move along. Like they would move all around. They would be all across and all the stuff that's going on in the room. And then if you took that mouse out of this room and you dropped them out there into the lobby, what would happen? Well, the mouse would freeze. They would just stop and freeze. And they wouldn't know where to go. They wouldn't know where to go. Because they don't know in their left brain where is a safe place to move to. And what Dr. Peterson pointed out is that they won't move anywhere because you have to be able to know where to go that's safe in order before you'll move. You'll freeze, right? So the left brain has to get on with things. You can't just freeze and just stay there. Like if you just can't be stuck in frozen in anxiety and frozen in panic and frozen. You have to move yourself along in society. And when you start to move yourself along, sometimes if you're stuck over there in that lower right brain, then what happens is you're going to just make up a story to convince yourself that you can move. You're just going to make up a story. The left brain, as Dr. McGilchrist pointed out, will lie to you. The left brain will lie to you, and because part of the reason is because it has to. Like it has to because it doesn't have any other way to cope with what's going on. But it's not a sound, rational decision. It's a coping mechanism that you have that goes back to that emotional center in the brain. And when you're dealing with an anxiety group, when you're dealing with that, then you have to do the bottom-up approach. And that's a difficult approach to do. It's the bottom-up approach is that approach that you have to come into with rhythmical catch, with touch, and with there are certain eye movements. That's what EMDR is about, right? We've had this conversation multiple times, but if you're new to the show, you might not have heard it exactly this way. And if you have heard it this way, maybe hearing it again will help. But that would make sense, right? It would make sense if we were stuck in an emotional situation that we couldn't get out of, if we were stuck in something that was way beyond our capacity, then what's happening is this amygdala is firing, and it is taking over. And that's where the stress response is initiated. And that stress response is now going to fire through the spinal cord until it hits the adrenal gland. And that adrenal gland is now going to release cortisol into the body, and we're going to set off the stress response. We're going to set off this whole cascade. The amygdala fires to the locus coeruleus. The locus coeruleus, I know you don't like, that's complicated, but there's a part of the brain that's going to just flood the brain with adrenaline, right? It's going to just cover the brain with adrenaline. Well, which side of the brain has the affinity for adrenaline? It's your right side. And now everything in the core that's below your brain is going to start to shut off. That's where your posture, your reproduction, your acid reflux, your digestive system, your immune system is going to start to shut off, because now we've got a problem that we think there is a threat. We think there is a threat. And because we think there is a threat, we're going to shut off all the systems inside the body that aren't going to help us deal with a threat. Like if we're digesting lunch, we got Chipotle for lunch. I got beans and chicken, double chicken. That's what I had for lunch. In order to digest that food, I have to be in a situation, in order to really digest that food properly, I really need to be in a situation that is non-threatening. It's going to help. It's going to help me if I'm over in my left brain, which is parasympathetic, which is rest and recover. But if I'm in my right brain is like, dude, look, if there's a tiger in this room right now, then there's no sense in you worrying about digesting your lunch. So your digestion might not function properly. You might have regurgitation. You might have heartburn. You might have acid reflux, right? Those sort of things that now you go looking for your Rolaids or your Tums or your Nexium or whatever your drug of choice is to try to get that acid that's supposed to be in your stomach out of your esophagus, right? That's part of what happens whenever this is happening. I actually had a patient that's got Barrett's esophagus, been dealing with it for several years, and been working on it, and does lots of exercise, and started getting adjusted, and has been through a little over a year and a half of adjusting, or maybe a little bit longer than that, and went and got a checkup, and their esophagus is doing really, really well. And I was like, yeah, I know it is, because your right brain's functioning better than it used to be. And we don't understand what that means. We don't really understand that's what's happening to us, but that is what's happening to us. When we're stuck over here in this right side brain, then our brain has such an intelligence. Like that, the spirit that runs our body is so smart. It's like, look, there could be a threat over here. Now the question is, why do we get stuck in that right side brain? What is the issue that's going on? And what we get told is that we have a chemical imbalance, and that's causing our problem, right? We get told that. I've heard it my whole entire life. I've heard it with almost every single person that's ever been on any sort of anxiety medication. They'll tell them, the medical world will tell them that they have some sort of chemical imbalance, and that's causing their problem. It's like, the acid in my stomach changes when I see food that is good. When I think I'm about to eat, I will have a change in the chemistry in my stomach, right? Like we all know that. You will start to salivate just talking about a lemon. If we start talking about a lemon right now, then you'll start to salivate in your mouth. You will have a change in chemistry in your mouth. If I had a big old fat lemon right here and I just sliced it in half, and then I took that and sliced it into a quarter, and then I took that lemon Just suck that lemon right there, right on the show. Everybody that's listening to be like, your mouth will be just start watering all of a sudden, right? Your brain changes the chemistry based on the environment that it's in. It wasn't the other way around. It wasn't the chemistry causing the brain problem unless there's some nutritional deficiency or some sort of issue that we need to address, right? But it's not a mistake. That's the biggest thing. It's not a mistake. We don't have a chemical, in my opinion, and based on everything that I know, we don't have a chemical imbalance in our brain that's a mistake. If we do, it's very rare. Go back to Dr. Obu, say common things happen most commonly. Okay, maybe there's a short, if we drew a bell curve, maybe there's a second, third deviation away from normal, that there's a small group of the population that might have that issue. For the rest of us, that is not the case. For the rest of us, we are not firing the pathway properly for multiple reasons. And that's where we would go back in my office and we would look at the physical, chemical, and mental emotional problems. Then when did they start? And you got to back it up to see exactly when they started, because some of this stuff started in the first 2 years of life. Neglect. Like that's what Dr. Vanderkolk talks about in The Body Keeps the Score, right? Like mother-child neglect. Neglecting a child, not paying attention to a child can start to set some of those pathways up. That's lower brain problems. That you get into a lower brain problem anxiety person, you cannot have a rational conversation with them that I've seen. And I could be wrong, and I haven't, because I'm not a licensed counselor either. But from what I understand from a health and wellness standpoint, and that's really what I'm trying to talk about from an anxiety standpoint, is a health and wellness standpoint. Do you have a lower brain that's taken over? Is that amygdala firing the process? Do I have the ability to get my rational brain to inhibit my lower brain? That's really the question. Can I do that? And if you're in the moderate to mild capability, you can, because that's where it gets into the curiosity. That's where it goes from curiosity to psycho inside the right hemisphere. That does matter right there. And you just think about it. And I talked about it yesterday, and I had to go home and give Leslie a kiss on the cheek and say I'm sorry for overreacting to you, and thank you for taking care of me. But this whole right brain is going to start with curious, and then it's going to move to fear, and then it's going to move over here to psycho. And I don't know if there's a H in that or not, but you're going to go all the way. It's going to move through that whole process right there. Like when it gets into the right, well, who's going to win the game? What's for supper? Right? What's for supper? I don't know what I'm having for supper tonight. Like, what's for supper? Well, that's a question. That's an unknown. That's a right brain thing. But I'm not going to freak out over it. Like, I'm not going to starve. We got food at home. If for some reason all the food disappeared in our house, I can go 5 streets over to my mom and dad's house, and I guarantee you I can get something to eat. Mom said the other day she could eat for a whole month or two with just the stuff that's in her pantry and her freezer. So there is no chance. And I got a couple dollars on me. I can go to United and get some food tonight. Like I could go to Walmart and get some food, whatever. I am not going to starve to death tonight, me personally, right? So when I ask myself the question, what's for supper? It's just curious. It's unknown. It's right-brained, but it's not going to create acid reflux. My whole reproductive system is not going to shut off over that question. I'm not going to get the flu over that question right there. That's not going to cause me a problem with my immune system because it's curious. Now, lock me up in a North Korean prison, torture me every single day, and feed me a little bitty tiny bowl of rice once every 2 or 3 days, and then ask me the question, what's for supper? Man, I might have a different response right there. I might be way off of curious and I might be way over here into fear. And I might get to the point, if you starve me enough over and abuse me enough over a long period of time, and you ask me what's for supper, I might cook and eat you, right? Like I could actually have that response in that right side brain when I'm dealing with that situation, right? Well, that's going to get lower into that emotional brain. It's going to take me out of that rational brain. I really ought to draw that line crooked and use it curious there and move it into psycho, because and I'm not calling someone psycho. I'm saying the response to the question is going to be extreme. That's what I'm trying to say about how we handle that anxiety in that right brain. Curiosity is where we might want to try to move back to. That's why if you're in the middle of it and you have enough rational thought, that's if you're up here and you have rational thought, those are the areas that really helps with the whole process of being social. That's the number one thing. Walking. Those two things are just massive. Using your eyes to move your brain. Those are the things that are that's the part, that upper rational brain on that right side is the part that now, if we're dealing with some moderate to mild anxiety, I just feel like I'm anxious, right? That's one of the things that we can do right there to start to understand. Okay, wait, maybe I need to drive the pathway of wellness. I need to drive the pathway of wellness to help me with my anxiety. I watched the national championship football game last night, and I told Leslie when it was over, that quarterback from Michigan is going to be the poster child of mental health for the next 15 years, I bet you. I bet you if you watch out in a year or two, he'll be a millionaire just based on the fact that he grounds himself, takes his shoes off, walks in on the earth, sits down, meditates. He had a conversation in the middle of the game in the second half when the fourth quarter started with his psychiatrist who's on the field, his mental health coach, right there in the middle of the deal. And then they end up winning the national championship. Now, it might have had something to do with those big old tackles they had. That's what my dad taught me that when I was a little kid. But that might have had something to do with that running game and that defense. But he won the game. He's 15-0. Hey, good for him, right? But there are things that we can do to help the way that our brain functions. There are some things that we can do to make sure that we can drive that pathway a little bit to get us over there in that known world. And one of the things we can do, just a simple thing, is to try to make things a little bit more curious. Instead of blowing them out of proportion, maybe I could just say, I wonder how this is going to work out. I wonder how this situation is going to work out. And see if I can move myself into curious. Because if I can get myself over to curious, I might just get myself into the known. It might be a whole lot easier to do right there. If you are dealing with a person that has this lower brain problem, if that amygdala person and they're in their lower brain, that's complicated. And it may have happened at an early stage. So physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses causes us to break down. So how can we do that? Physically, we can be social and we can walk. Chemically, we can start to really balance things. We can balance things like omega-3 fatty acids. We can watch our refined carbohydrate intake. We can control our insulin. Insulin is going to have a lot to do. Go back with Dr. Bredesen stuff. Insulin has a lot to do with how we function, right? That there's if we control our insulin, which means we control our blood sugar, we give our brain a better opportunity to work. If we get exercise, we give our brain a better opportunity to work. There's several things we can do to help us get our brain to work better. So, hey, thanks for listening to the show. If there's anything I can do to help you, send me a message. I hope you guys have a great evening. And I will see you tomorrow night right here at 6 o'clock for our book review night. Have a great night.